Vedanta, this is the big news. Vedanta has revised the terms for the Cairn India merger. I just have this flash. Maybe Ajay has more details. He's standing by as well. I reckon this would be okay. Let me not presume things. Ajay, do you have some details? Okay, we'll just get in Ajay in moments from now. Cairn India minority shareholder to get 4 preference shares and 1 share as well of Vedanta. Remember, this is a departure from the earlier announced merger terms as well. So this is interesting. Keep in mind that for a really long time now, I mean, okay, there's too much of confusion here, but let me just make my point. For a really long time now, Cairn and Vedanta have been saying that they are working actively towards the merger and they expect the merger to happen soon. Now there is a revised term that has happened as well. Yatin, give us the details. What else do we have? As of now, what I have, I'll tell you, Yatin, 4 preference shares and a single share. What else do you have?
Yeah, so Neeraj, the earlier arrangement was 1 share of Vedanta for 1 share of Cairn, and incrementally Cairn shareholders would get 1 preference shares of 10 face value. Now the deal has been sweetened to 4 preference shares, so the ratio of equity shares remains in the ratio 1:1, but you get 4 preference shares of the face value 10 rupees, and that carry an annual dividend or an annual coupon payable to the rate of 7.5%. So now what I understand is that the earlier ratio was 1:1 and there was a 10 rupee preference share allotted to it. Now there is almost a 40 rupee face value preference share which is allotted to the investors of Cairn India, which means that if you look at the premium or the sweetening of the deal, that is to the tune of 30 rupees per share. So, that is the kind of appreciation in value one could see in shares of Cairn India. And on an overall basis, if you look at the scenario, we had a lot of minority shareholders and funds, including LIC, which was not happy with the kind of valuations for Cairn India when the merger was supposed to take place between Vedanta. But now the new deal is that you get 40 rupees worth of preference shares, and versus the previous deal that is almost 30 rupee in value incremental for the shareholders of Cairn PLC, Cairn India.
Yeah, I think, Yatin, stay on because I would want you to come in on this piece and the challenges that the merger used to face and whether this does do a little bit of sweetening and for the merger to go through. Mr. J.N. Gupta joins in as well with his thoughts. Mr. Gupta, your initial thoughts. The deal, certainly from what it was, a bit more sweeter. Instead of 4 preference shares of 10 rupees each, the equity share swap remains the same as well. Your initial thoughts, sir?
See, if you look at the current market price, the today's market price of Cairn is around 195 rupees and that of Vedanta is about 169 or something like this. So there is a difference of about 25-30 rupees between the prices. So they have tried to adjust this price difference by giving a percent share. So if you look at only purely on the value to value basis, the Cairn shareholders are getting the same money which they would get today. But the entire deal is subject to a couple of things. If you remember earlier in the past, the government had said that till such time the tax issue is settled, there will not be any merger between Cairn and Vedanta. So that is still in the air, and secondly, the thing has become further complicated by the recent news when Cairn has said that they have lodged a counter case against the government of India for the loss of so many things. So if that case is hanging, then probably there will not be any regulatory approval coming forth for this merger. As far as value is concerned, it is okay now, but again the issue will be to bring Cairn and LIC, Cairn PLC and LIC on the board, because if you recall, last time also Cairn PLC had expressed its reservation on the merger. As far as business is concerned, see, we know, none of us as analysts can say that we know to run the business better than the companies know. So I don't want to say anything, but we always say that it is always what suits the company, because many a times companies say that we are demerging because we are in a different business space. One is mining, other is something. And sometimes when they do not find it suitable, then they say we are merging because of the administrative convenience. So I will not go into this whether it is administrative convenience or something, but ultimately the issue would be there is a cash cow, Cairn, which is going to merge with a cash guzzler, which is Vedanta. But if it merger goes through over a period of 4 or 5 years, maybe their liquidity problems will be over.
Okay. Mr. Gupta, this is Yatin from the research team. I would like to understand, we had a lot of financial institutions which were opposing the entire merger plan. Rightly so, because we had Cairn India's whose valuation was slightly on the lower side versus Vedanta. And Cairn, as you mentioned, is a very cash-rich company. Now that the contours of the deal are changed, we have the merger ratio which is 1:1, but the preference share component has been increased from 10 rupee face value to almost 40 rupee face value, which means 30 rupees extra for the shareholders of Cairn India. In that scenario, do you think the financial institutions and the domestic funds like LIC, which were talking about better valuations, and then and only then they would agree in terms of the minority shareholder vote? Now, do you think there is a realistic scenario? Probably the funds or the minority shareholders would now agree upon this particular merger ratio, since it's sweetened by almost 30 rupees technically?
See, it is a very difficult question to answer because each investor has a different investment reasons. Now, looking purely at the financial maths or price maths, as you rightly said that it makes a sense that you are getting 30 rupees extra and it is almost at par or maybe even sweeter than what Cairn would have expected. But then the question comes that how the analysts have looked into the future of these two companies, whether they feel that the Cairn future is better or Vedanta future is better, or as a joint entity the future is better. So it will always depend upon the analyst to analyst, and as you know, the investors have a different preference for different sectors. So anybody who is interested in oil sector would certainly not like to go into mining sector or vice versa, or anybody who is interested in the
No, right.
resources,
Mr. Gupta,
so
Mr. Gupta,
they will go.
Mr. Gupta, since you mentioned an analyst to analyst view, I just thought let's get an analyst and let's hear out what his presumptions are, and then we'll continue this point with you as well. Tarang Bhanushali of IIFL is up, and he tracks this space closely. Okay, I think we just lost Tarang because of the rains, but sorry. Sir, so maybe you make your full point, we'll get the analyst view and then again come back to you. But you were saying that it will differ from an analyst to an analyst.
Yes, so because somebody may like mining sector, somebody may like oil sector, somebody may like both sectors, somebody will say with natural resources is my cup of tea, somebody says natural resources only which are oil or my tea, something, it depends upon industry. But then the question will be what will be the role of the Cairn PLC, whether who are purely into the oil sector, oil and natural gas sector would like to be part of the mining sector or not. The other thing is this, one has to look into what is going to happen in the future, because the Vedanta group will certainly like to merge Hindustan Zinc, which is a better cash cow than any of these companies, into its fold. But the only hitch there for the merger there is the government shareholding, which has been hanging for sale for last decade or more, maybe more. So once that resolves, then you can see certainly they will merge Hindustan Zinc also, and it will become a big conglomerate. But that is the future. So as of now, again it depends on each analyst's view, how they look at the sector and how they feel that whether this company, a joint entity, will be better operating or a single entity.
That's right. Okay. Tarang is with us. I have a question for Yatin as well. But Tarang, your initial thoughts really, I think the market's got a hint of this merger ratio being sweetened because Cairn was on fire today, and this week it has gained tremendously. But what is your initial reaction to these revised terms?
Well, I think it is a bit negative for Vedanta, because if you look at the current business and the current valuations, we thought that the sweetener would not be there because the commodity prices or the non-ferrous prices have gone up sharply. And so the valuations of Vedanta were quite attractive. At the current rate, Cairn India would be a slightly expensive. So we thought the deal would go through at the previous rate only, or a minor sweetener would be added. I believe this would be somewhat negative for Vedanta at the current deal.
I just want to get you in this discussion as well, because a lot of people have been saying that LIC should oppose this merger because it was not at all a sweet deal for Cairn minority shareholders as well. Now that the deal has been revised, you've been speaking to a lot of dealers, a lot of analysts. What do you think? What is your initial reaction with regards to the institutional action that might be for this?
Neeraj, see, if you look at the share prices today, Vedanta closed somewhere around 180 rupees per share, and we had Cairn, which shares closed around 192. So 170 and 192. So the difference, the premium of Cairn to Vedanta shares is currently 22 rupees. And if you talk about preference shares coming in to the tune of 40 rupees and having a coupon of 7.5%, that means that the arbitrageurs would come in the marketplace and make the transaction efficient, which means that if you are holding shares of Cairn, that will probably open gap up on Monday, given the fact that if you were to establish an arbitrage, you would simply short shares of Vedanta, buy Cairn, and probably lock in a 40 rupee kind of a premium which is there in terms of the preference shares. But the Cairn shares are already up 22 rupees to Vedanta. So the clean arbitrage at this point in time is 18 rupees per share. In which case probably Cairn India should move higher by 4-5% at least in anticipation of the deal getting sweetened. So if you talk about the dealer feedback, the arbitrager feedback, they clearly say that Cairn should trade at least 30 rupee premium to Vedanta. Today it's almost 22 rupees. So another 8 to 10 rupees in terms of Cairn shares getting appreciated on Monday, and in tandem with, of course, the movement that we can see in Vedanta, and the remainder 10 rupees will probably be an arbitrage window, because typically all these transactions take 6 months to get concluded. So assuming that most of the investors, including Cairn PLC, LIC, are on board with this deal getting sweetened and the transaction getting completed in the next 6 months, probably a jump of 10 rupees to the current market valuation could be seen in Cairn India, is what initial feedback I get from the dealers and the arbitrager desks.
And remember, I think a large part of this could happen in the initial 1 minute pop itself. So not that too many people will get to benefit out of it. But Tarang, Bhanushali, Mr. Gupta, same question to both of you. So Tarang, since you mentioned this point that it is slightly negative for Vedanta, we've established what the arbitrage position could be with regards to this deal. My question to you is this, that the belief always was that institutions by and large will be opposed to this deal, and as a result of that, Cairn India shares had corrected quite a bit when the first part of this deal was announced. Do you think this move leads to institutions like LIC being on board?
Well, I think with the new deal, most of the institutions would be on board for the deal, largely because the sweetener is quite positive for the Cairn shareholders. If you look at the business profile, the change in the outlook for commodity prices over the last 6 months, then I believe that the institutions will not have any problem with this, and I think the deal will go through going forward.
Amit Tandon of IIS is also with us. Mr. Gupta, I just want one comment from Amit Tandon, then I come to you as well. Please, sir, please stay on. Amit Tandon, what was your stance when this deal was first announced as your advice to minority shareholders? Does this change your view or stance in any way?
No, in fact, good afternoon. What we had said when the deal was announced was that it's broadly within our threshold of the relative valuations of the two companies, and it's not, as we believe or as we all know, its valuation is not an exact science. So since we were broadly okay, we had asked the shareholders to go along with the proposed transaction and vote for it. So what today's transaction has done is, if at all, reinforced the view that the shareholders of Cairn will get a little bit more than what they had earlier imagined they would be getting. So it is something to be taken. It really doesn't materially change our view. We will, of course, revisit the whole equation once. But having said so, earlier our view was for, and now the Cairn shareholders are getting a little bit more than what they were earlier expecting.
Amit, most of or a lot of institutional shareholders would be on board with this?
Look, I suspect and this is only conjecture on my part.
Of course.
That if they've, spent 6 to 8 months and then revised the terms, it's a fair assessment to say that they would have sounded out the market, got a feedback, factored that in, and then announced a revised price. It would be a little bit foolhardy to announce a price and then go back to the negotiating table once more.
Okay. Mr. Gupta, one more question in terms of the kind of cash-rich balance sheet that Cairn has. They have, probably looked at a preference share route. So, in terms of the sweetening of the deal, that comes in additional creation of preference shares. So, as a minority shareholder, do you think the expectation of cash rather than preference share was something that could have been done by the board of Vedanta? Or probably you think preference share is also something which would be a tradable instrument and hence liquid, and probably financial institutions, minority investors, retail investors probably should look at this scheme positively. Even if the deal is sweetened in form of the preference shares, it still makes a lot of sense probably to accept it at this point in time.
See, you got to go into different things. When you issue preference share, the cash is not going out of the company. The cash will certainly come from some investor, because if I am a retail investor, I get a preference share, I can certainly sell it. So this preference share will ultimately be parked with some long-term institution which will be having all these preference shares. But here you have to look into couple of other things. I was listening to Amit, and I would say that at the time earlier we were against this deal for two reasons. One was the Vedanta had given a statement that they will not use the cash of the Cairn, and we had questioned that how it is possible when you are a merged entity, you will be keeping two cashes separately. On one hand you will be having a 10,000 or 40,000 crore debt, on other hand you will have a 10,000 crore, 20,000 crore cash in hand. That was one. If you recall, previous time the price had come down of Cairn India from around 345 rupees to 180 rupees, and that of Vedanta from 296 rupees to 180 rupees. So we said that the fall in the Cairn was much higher, and that's why it was against the interest of the Cairn India. Now, if you look at today's perspective, it is opposite. The Vedanta has jumped from 58 rupees sometime in February to about 170 rupees, whereas Cairn has jumped from 106 rupees in January to 192 rupees in January. So on one hand, Vedanta has gained around.
Anil Agarwal is joining us on air. Mr. Agarwal, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to ET now. Now, we have had 3 or 4 panelists speaking about this deal, and they believe that you would have taken feedback from a lot of people and then sweetened the deal. Do you expect this to go through unopposed?
No, we have revised the term, which given the premium, the best premium possible. We always had the intention to go through, because this is to create a natural resource company out of India. So that was intention. I believe this is a nice sweetener. This is a nice premium, which is a win-win for everybody.
Yes, sir. It certainly seems.
Thank you.
It certainly, Mr. Agarwal, do you think that most of the shareholders will be on board with this?
No. You are asking such a question. After thinking of everything, then only we have done it. No.
Of course, sir. Of course. Abhinaba, I'm sure you have a question for Mr.
Agarwal. I mean, what is the kind of feedback that you received from LIC before you tweak the merger deal? I mean, is this something that institutional shareholders like Cairn, PLC and LIC were asking for?
We have kept everybody's in mind and looked at everybody's interest, and then revised the terms. I believe that it will suit to everybody. This will be a very win-win for everybody.
In fact, Mr. Agarwal, the last time we spoke, a week before last, I had asked you about whether you are looking at a deal sweetener. That time you said no. What suddenly changed in the last 10 days?
No, I can't tell you what. You can dig it as much as you want, but I want to keep you in this very straightforward. We have done a great sweetener. This is a very good thing what we have done, which can suit to everybody. That's what we have done. Hopefully, this will be, everybody will be happy, and then we'll be able to create a very important natural resource company out of India. Thanks.
Mr. Agarwal, are you still there with us?
Agarwal is still with us. I think we just lost that line, but we essentially got Abhinava most of the things that we wanted to. I think Amit Tandon is still with us. And Amit, if you are still with us and if you can hear me, you just heard Amit Agarwal, Mr. Agarwal come in and speak about this deal first to us. He sounded fairly confident about most of the institutional shareholders being on board with them.
Yeah, so yes, he certainly did sound very confident that the institutional investors will be supporting the deal.
I mean, no, the reason I'm asking you this statement or a question is, Amit, because it ties in with what you said, because you mentioned that they wouldn't, come out with such a step after such a long time only to go back to the drawing board. It certainly seems to be a done deal now.
You need to remember, if you look at the shareholding pattern, a couple of things. One is that it's going to be a special resolution. If you look at the shareholding pattern, there is a large percentage which is owned by LIC and Cairn UPLC. So earlier, both of them, if I'm not mistaken, own about 17-18% of the stock. Now, if one of the two had voted against the deal earlier, it was very clear that it was not likely that the deal would go through. Clearly, given the fact that the price has been revised and how confident Mr. Agarwal is sounding, there is every reason to, or there are enough reasons to expect that the deal will go through. Of course, and all these things you need to remember. There's a fairly longish timeline. There are a lot of regulatory approvals which are required. And finally, what we are seeing at the moment is some amount of euphoria.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.